Joe, premier matchup this week in Week 8. Georgia goes down to the Lone Star State, goes down to Austin, Texas to take on what may be one of the best teams in the country in Texas. Look, in unpacking this game, which we're about to do, Texas has, as we mentioned earlier, has not necessarily been tested by a team that can throw the football around maybe like Georgia can. However, Georgia's had multiple games where they've struggled. Last week versus Mississippi State, the first half versus Alabama. They haven't been up to the Georgia standard. The Kentucky game comes to mind, winning 13-12. When you look at this game, Georgia versus Texas, how do you see it playing out?
Yeah, Texas to this point, the way that they've played, they have dominated through their schedule. They have kicked the crap out of every single team that they have played, which sometimes is a indicator of a team's elite level of performance, or it could be a harbinger of, hey, maybe they're a little bit overhyped. I'm not going to go there yet. I'm not going to sit here and do that. I think that would be overly reactionary to say that Texas is overhyped. However, with them dominating every single statistical category offensively and defensively, and for what we've seen them play on the field, more importantly, that they're just chipping away, and then blowing past teams. We need to remember what happened this past week with Ohio State. We talked about with Ohio State that they were the best team on paper. They looked extremely elite and dominant. And there was no reason why Ohio State should have lost to Oregon. And the final result went in the complete opposite direction. I'm not saying that that's my reason why I'm blatantly picking Georgia. I haven't come to a decision yet. This is too close of a call for me to make a decision. But I think that, and I believe, as I said in the open, Blake, there is not enough evidence for me to indicate that Texas is as good as their stats provide. There's just not enough evidence. And this is the first real opportunity and test to determine if Texas can live up to the hype that they've currently built so far this year.
You have to just watch Texas on film and see how dominant they've been to make a determination of where you think that they are. Now, I agree with you. They haven't been tested. And look, the Texas fans that were in our comments last night, I agree with you. You don't make your schedule, right? Like you scheduled a Michigan team that you thought would be a lot better in a better situation than where they were, and I get that. It's not on you. Joe, they have been dominant against the teams that they've played. The thing to what you're trying to say, which it really comes down to the way that I see this game. I don't think that Texas, whose secondary was 113th in the country last year in passing yards allowed, they have not been tested. Now, they're second in the country in passing yards allowed right now, but who is the best quarterback that's given them stress? Like, has there been a team that can stress them, wide receivers, running backs, tight ends? Like, we don't know that. And we do know that about Georgia, and we've seen them do it against a really good opponent in Alabama. What I don't want to do here is say that Texas is not a good football team because, like, look, we had Pate on here. He said that he got to see them up close and personal. They're big, they're physical, they're tough. That's very fair, and I trust in his judgment and the things that he saw against Michigan. The problem that I have is, Joe, and I said this last night, I'm going to continue to say it here today, to your point. I have no idea who they are. Now, they could come out and win this football game and do really well. Would not shock me in the slightest. It really wouldn't. And we would get validation of who they are as a program. And they're coming off a playoff run. They're coming off so many good things. They recruited really well. Quinn Ewers is back. They got a lot of really good weapons. Their O-line and D-line is really good. Anthony Hill's been playing very well. I just still don't know what to make of them. And this is going to be the biggest test that they have all year in the regular season. I don't know if there's another test or hurdle to where on paper you can say that it's not like they're not going to face a team like this. Now, here's the thing. I think that there's something to be said, Joe, after we saw Ohio State, to what you mentioned. Ohio State had also not been tested, and that secondary got cooked. Got absolutely cooked. And Oregon was a struggling football team going into that game. The difference in this one, though, Texas will be at home. And I think it's a very big deal. And they're coming off a situation where they kind of had a little bit of a tune-up game again. And I hate to say it like that, against Oklahoma. That was a tune-up game, Joe.
Yeah, well, I mean, it 1,000% was. And they looked a lot more dominant than Georgia did against Mississippi State.
And I don't like that transitive property thing either. You know, like
wait. That wasn't a transitive property. I'm saying that all I'm just trying to point out is both these teams had weaker opponents this past week. Not when they both played individually Mississippi State, but when they played this past week, Texas smoked their opponent. They didn't allow a touchdown, and Georgia gave up 31 points to the worst team in the SEC. So, like, the context does need to be brought up.
But I need to point this out. Georgia is 92nd in the country in run offense. Their O-line has had at times and struggles where they've not been able to run the football. They're 92nd, Joe. I mean, it's the worst under Kirby the last 5 years. They're 92nd. And I look at, you have to replace, if you're Texas, two really premier interior defensive tackles. Joe, I don't know if they're going to be able to go into Texas and run the football. There may be a situation where Carson Beck's going to have to sling this thing, and we'll find out. But Georgia has had massive amounts of struggles running the football.
So that's one thing that for the Georgia side of things, where if you can't run the ball, it's going to really hurt you in this game. Right now, per team rankings, they're 112th in rush play percentage. They're only running the ball about 44% of the time. That's a problem. That's a serious problem. They are getting away from running the football when they had tremendous success doing it last year, despite having a much weaker running back room. Now what we're starting to witness is that this team can't get after it on the ground, and they're forced to throw the ball a million times. And that's what led to the interceptions that Carson Beck threw in the bad offensive performance that they had in the first half against Alabama. They have to have a much more balanced attack. When you're going up against a defense that is as deep as this and as consistent as they've played with as many athletes along the line of scrimmage, they can't start getting into this, we're going to throw the ball every single play type of a rhythm that they had against Alabama.
They don't have the weapons to do that.
No, they don't, and they keep trying to do it. Bobo, it's something that we've talked about a ton. He needs to get away from doing that. That is going to be the biggest make or break for me because that's been hurting them the most.
Well, let me ask you a question then. You say he needs to get away from it, but when he's tried to get away from it, they have been unable to sustain drives by running the football.
Are you saying they have not been or they have been?
No, they haven't been able to sustain drives running the football. Again, they're 92nd in the country running offense.
But when we saw in the second half against Alabama proof that even though they were down by a ton, they decided to start running the ball more, and then they were having success running the ball more with.
I don't think that but to that point, I don't think that Bama front seven, what we've seen from them the last 2 weeks, is worth a damn.
I think that the context of their yards per game average running the football is low because they're just choosing not to run the football. I think that there could be more success, and I know that they're banged up and not having Tate Radledge is a problem, but I think that it has more to do with them choosing to throw the ball way more than they should be. And I keep bringing this up as just an overall philosophical issue. It feels like that because they have Carson Beck, that they think that they can just go back, drop back, and he's going to turn into this otherworldly player that he's really not. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.
Yeah, I mean that could be fair. I'm not willing to go that far. Maybe he can be because he can come into this game and light up a Texas team, and then you'd be like, I mean, Joe, we were saying the same thing. Let me tell you why I have pause. It's not about what you're saying. The reason I have pause is we were saying the same thing about Dillon Gabriel last week, and he bent over Ohio State and started spanking that rear end. Now, it's two completely different things. I get it. I understand it. I mean, I understand how bad of a take that might sound, but, well, this is a completely different situation. You're right. However, the part that I keep throw back at you is like, maybe you're right. But has that Texas secondary been challenged like this? They haven't.
They haven't. But to your point about Dillon Gabriel, you're right. But what helped Oregon and why they played their best football is that they had balance.
Yeah, they ran the football. They
ran the ball really well against a really good front seven and a really good defensive line.
I think is a really good front seven.
Right.
We don't know about Ohio State yet.
All I'm saying is that sometimes having success running the football, yes, it's an issue, but bailing on it completely does not produce the results that some offensive coordinators think it does. It causes more problems than it does help them.
Here's another thing that if I'm Georgia, I'm worried about going into this game. Number one, Georgia's 75th in the country in third down offense. They have been very bad at staying on the field and conversion rate. I think that's something that we got to really take into account. And look, that defense for Texas, to their credit, their front seven has been really good. Colin Simmons has been really good. The freshman, Hill, and all the rest of the guys have been really good. The question is going to be for me, Joe, going into this game, I think a big matchup. Can they keep a clean pocket and keep Carson Beck upright? And I think that Beck is going to have to, Joe, I say this every week, and people think I'm being too simple on kids or players. I think early in this game that Carson Beck's going to have to get 2, maybe to 3 reads and get out of there and get positive yards. In games like this against good teams, positive yardage matters. It's the only thing that matters. You got to be able to continue to sustain first downs and drives. When I look at this game, though, man, I got to be real with you. The unknownness to me of what Texas is gives me massive pause. Now, I'm not picking this game on a Monday. So many things can happen.
Yeah, this one's too tight to pick right now.
Yeah,
way too tight.
Way too early in the week and way too close. However, I just feel like I know more about one team than the other. And not knowing as much as I want to know about Texas, Joe, more than halfway through the year scares me. And to be honest with you, Joe, here's another thing that I would throw out there. I don't know if Sark – look, coaches will tell you that they know everything about their football team halfway through the year. I don't think Sark really knows about his football team yet. I really don't. I think he understands maybe more offensively of who they are because you had Quinn Ewers that went down. I don't think that they really know what they have defensively. And I don't know if Georgia is a team to completely test that, but it is your biggest test. It's the best team that you've played. Man, this one's is wearing me down because I can't – like, I want to say that my eyeballs are – this is how I want to finish it. My eyeballs are seeing that Texas has really good dudes, really good coaches, really good athletes. And then I put on the film and I'm like, man, that guy he's going up against is not a good football player. It just I want to see I think I want to see Texas overcome something before I'm able to say, okay, they are here, they're in the SEC, and they have arrived. And look, for Texas, you beat Georgia on Saturday, you show the country and everybody in the SEC that you are a player. And I think that that's more or less. And look, if this game was at Georgia, I'd feel much different. But because Georgia's got to go on the road, look, man, that place can get chaotic in Austin.
A couple of things that you just said there, for definitely agree with it having to be on the road is certainly going to help Texas in this situation. I think at the current moment, though, I have to lean in Georgia's direction slightly. And we're talking like a 52% lean. Like this is very, very slight. Because one thing's very clear here. Texas has been one of the most productive pass rush units. They're one of the best teams in sack production rate. They're one of the best teams in interception production rate, in turning over opposing quarterbacks. But without the context of which offensive lines they've gone against, they've played some terrible offensive lines. They've played against some really weak young quarterbacks who are still figuring out what they're doing, especially we saw with Hawkins, where a couple of flashes, but he was seriously overwhelmed in the game for Oklahoma. Because of all of that, for what you just mentioned, not having the full context of is this as legit of a Texas team as we think? I think that Texas and Georgia are a lot closer than many would love to admit. More importantly, the thing that I said after the Alabama loss, Kirby is too good of a head coach to not use that game as an opportunity, as a rallying point. The way that they played against Mississippi State's not great, and it makes me feel really nauseous making this statement, but I would think that stepping into this important of a matchup after you lost already on the road, you have to get one here. So I'm leaning very, very slightly by 2% in the direction of Georgia because this feels like a lock-in game with the season on the line.
What's going to happen all week? I mentioned in the beginning. I see some of people in the chat saying this. Oh, they gave up 31 to Mississippi State. Okay. All right. I love when people try to come in here and give me transitive properties. I love it. I love every time that people try to do that because that's not the sport. Welcome to college football where that doesn't happen. All right.